Mystery of Black Hollow Lane, Chapter 5. Saturday. Emmy got lost twice on her way back to Audrey House, but she eventually found the right path. She slid into the crowded common room and made a beeline for the stairs. She didn't feel like being stared at again. "Hey, Emmy!" Lola waved at her and pointed to the empty seat at her table. She was sitting with Jack and a few other people Emmy didn't really know. Emmy fiddled with a button on her sweater. She wasn't really used to people asking her to sit with them. She squeezed in next to Lola and tried to look like she belonged. A girl with blonde curls gave Emmy a shy wave, and Emmy waved back. "That's Natalie," Lola said, "and that's Jaya." She pointed to the willowy girl who had gotten her the shoes from her mother. "She's a lot cooler than the rest of us, but we try not to hold that against her." Emmy blinked. She didn't know what she'd do if someone said that about her, but the girl named Jaya just laughed and went back to her conversation with Natalie. "Did you have a society today?" Lola asked Emmy. "Yeah, Latin." Jack looked up. "You're in the Latin Society?" "Yeah, Madam Boyd put me in there to try and help me catch up." "Right." Jack picked up a new pencil and started shading a drawing he was working on. "So, how was it? Did you figure out how to get in the building?" Emmy stared at Jack. How did he know she'd have trouble? "Yeah, but it took a while. Larrabee said he'd forgotten to send someone to show me how to get in." Jack smirked. "He always says that. It's a test to see if you've got problem-solving skills or something like that. Why would you need to pass a test to join a school club? They just want you to have more control over who gets in. They're not exactly the friendliest bunch, you know." "Tell me about it," Emmy grumbled. "There was this one guy who showed up while I was trying to figure out how to get in, and he just pretended I wasn't even there. I think I've seen him around the common room. He must be in the Edmund house." Jack and Lola looked at each other. "Dark hair?" Lola asked. Emmy nodded. "Too much hair gel, pretty boy blazer. Looks like he's got a giant stick up his..." Jack kicked Lola under the table and she swore. "That's Brian. He's Lola's cousin," Jack said. "He was my roommate in first year. Made my life miserable." "What did he do?" Jack shifted in his chair. "Mostly pranks, stupid stuff like that." "It wasn't just stupid stuff," Lola said. "That night when you..." "That was an accident," Jack said. Lola didn't say anything, but it looked like she was practically chewing her tongue to try and keep quiet. Pranks, stupid stuff, accidents. Seemed like Emmy couldn't hear anything about Latin society without hearing about those things, too. "Brian mostly leaves me alone now," Jack said. "He's too scared of Lola." Emmy's eyebrows shot up. "Why? What'd you do?" She gave him a bloody nose and made him cry in front of all his friends. Emmy laughed. "You actually punched your cousin?" "It was good for him," Lola said. "What did your mum say?" "I got in massive trouble, but that's nothing new. She didn't care about it being my cousin, though. His dad's my mum's half-brother, but he and my mum don't get on." "What about your dad?" Emmy asked. "He lives in Glasgow," Lola replied. "They got divorced when I was 1. "Oh, I'm sorry," Lola shrugged. "Could be worse." She glanced at Jack. He was stirring his fingertips and pinching them together. "You mean me?" Jack didn't look up. He smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "Let's just say I don't exactly fit in the Galt family mold. My brothers live up to family expectations better than I ever will." "How many brothers do you have?" Emmy asked. 3. Vincent's already left school. He works for my dad. Oliver won't stay here or start here until next year. And Malcolm's in last year. You probably saw him at Latin Society." Emmy nodded. She wasn't sure if she should say more. It seemed like Jack's brothers were a bit of a sore spot. Are there other school societies?" "Yeah, loads," Lola said. "Jack does all the artsy ones, painting, sculpture, all that junk." Jack laughed. While you do all the useless ones like rowing and football." "Football? You mean soccer. Finally, a club Emmy could get excited about." "No, I mean football," Lola said, "and you'd better get used to calling it that around here. I'm an attacking midfielder." Jack snorted. "Yeah, well, I think you took your role as an attacker a bit too seriously last year." "What? Why? What did you do?" Emmy asked. Lola rolled her eyes. "It was no big deal." "Oh, Are you talking about Lola's suspension? Natalie looked over at them. I was on a pitch when it happened. She punched a girl in the middle of a match and got herself banned for most of the season, last season. It's practically a school legend. It wasn't my fault, Lola protested. How is it not your fault when you punch someone in the face? Jaya asked. That girl was making fun of Mariam's hijab. She's Muslim, and she likes to keep her head covered when she plays. What else was I supposed to do? I don't know, but I probably wouldn't have started to punch up in front of the official, Jack replied. Do you have much football in America, Emmy? Natalie asked. Yeah, there's lots. I mean, our professional league isn't as popular as some other sports, but lots of people play soccer. I mean, football. You should come and watch us on Saturday, Natalie said. The whole school usually comes to our matches. Emmy's smile faded. Her mum probably wouldn't like her going to soccer match. I don't know. I've got a lot of homework. Who cares about homework when you're playing St. Mary's? Lola asked. They beat us for the East Anglican Championships last year. We've been waiting to play them for 6 months. Emmy tugged on her ear. Her mother hadn't said that she couldn't attend matches. Well, I guess I could take a few hours off from studying. The others kept talking about the match, but Emmy wasn't listening. She drummed her fingers on the table. What her mother didn't know wouldn't hurt her. 3 days later, Emmy tossed her laundry in a washing machine and watched and looked at her watch. She'd have a hurry to see what was going to eat before the match started. She ran upstairs, threw on a sweatshirt, and was almost out the door when she grimaced. There was a lot of homework piled up on her nightstand. She should probably stay in and get that work done. Thanks to Victoria and her irritating friend Arabella, Emmy had hardly gotten anything done all week. They constantly played annoying music, and their nail polish smelled so bad it was like living in the school's chemistry lab. As aggravating as Victoria was, Emmy's research on her dad was even more frustrating. She was getting nowhere. Anytime she had a moment alone, she'd grab the letter and the box and examine every inch of them. If there was a clue to what those medallions were for, or who had sent the letter, she couldn't figure it out. She didn't know what to do next. Emmy looked at the homework pile again. If her mum knew she was going to soccer match when she had so much work to do. She squared her shoulders and ran out the door. Her mother wasn't here, and she'd get to that work later. She ran into the hall and started piling food onto her plate. The tables nearby were strangely quiet. The talk about the accident had died down by now, but there was always something that kept pulling people together and having them buzz about something. Usually everyone was talking over each other, but there was a lot of whispering today. She looked up and her mouth fell open. Half the room was staring at her. Her face got hot and she looked down at her toast. How had she screwed up now? Jack and Lola were sitting near the door and Emmy made a beeline for them. Lola looked up and choked, spewing her juice across the table. What the bloody hell are you wearing? She spluttered. Emmy looked down at her clothes. Blue sweatshirt, jeans, old sneakers. Wasn't that good enough for weekends at Wellsworth? Jack stared at her, a sausage hanging limply from his fork. You cannot wear that today. Emmy pulled at her sweatshirt and sat down. I thought we didn't have to wear our uniforms on weekends. Your uniform would be better than that, Lola scoffed. Why, that? What? You're dressed head to toe in blue, Jack said. Blue is St. Mary's colour. You look like you're supporting them. Emmy looked around the hall. Everyone was wearing Wellsworth official colours of green and grey. She started chewing her nails. There were so many unwritten rules at this school, she'd never keep them all straight. I don't have anything green or grey left. I threw it all in the laundry because I've been wearing it all week. Jack turned around. Jaya, Emmy needs some emergency Wellsworth kilt kits. Think you can help? Jaya looked at me up and down and jumped out of her seat. No time for breakfast. Let's get on the move. 20 minutes later, Emmy was tugging on the cowl of a delicate cashmere sweater. Overflowing sodas and vinegar-soaked fries were being passed all around in the football stands. Please don't let me spill on this thing. The sweater was beautiful, but somehow it made her feel even more plain than usual. Cashmere belonged on girls like Jaya, tall, thin, and chic. Emmy had a roll up her cuffs on Jaya's slacks, which seriously lessened their sophistication. Finally, she spotted Jack waving at her, and she eased her way toward him and his friends. A sandy-haired boy leaned down from the row behind and gave her a friendly smile. It's Emmy, right? She nodded. I'm Cadell, he says. I'm Jack's roommate. Emmy tried to smile. This was one of those times when she was supposed to say something friendly, but couldn't figure out what it was. I expect you didn't see much football in America, he went on. Have you ever been to a match before? Emmy grinned. Yeah. Well, if you have any questions about how it all works, just ask. I play on the boys' team, you know. Made it all the way to the East Anglican finals last year. Now, there are 10 players on the field, excluding the keeper, of course. And Cadell was interrupted by the roar of crowd. The teams had taken the pitch. Here, have some licorice, Jack handed her some candy. Thanks, but I don't really like licorice. Jack shoved it into her hand anyway. Doesn't matter. It's good luck. Emmy ripped a piece off and dutifully chomped on it as the opening whistle blew. The game was tense from the very first moments. Both teams were as good as Emmy had ever played, and they obviously didn't like each other. The atmosphere in the stands was electric, like the best matches she'd played back home. For the first time since she'd gotten here, something felt familiar. Players yelling signals to each other, coaches screaming instructions, the scraping of cleats against grass and rubber. It was like getting a letter from home, one that was bitter and sweet at the same time. She didn't belong in the stands. She belonged on the field. She should be one calling out the signals. It should be her cleats pounding on the turf. When the Wellsworth striker scored in the 18th minute, Emmy jumped up and down, and the rest of the crowd. But she couldn't help wishing she could do more than just cheer. It took a while for the crowd to file out after the match, which gave Cadell a lot of time to explain the game's finer points. You see, that St. Mary's girl was offside because she was in front of the last defender when her midfielder passed her the ball. Her protest was totally unnecessary. I thought somebody bumped into Jack and he grabbed onto Cadell so he wouldn't fall. Then someone else bumped into Jack, and then a third person, all three boys, snickered and kept walking up the stairs like nothing had happened. You okay? Cadell asked. Jack ran his fingers through his hair. Yeah, no big deal. His voice cracked a little and he cleared his throat. What was that about? Emmy asked. Just a few blokes who don't like me that much. Emmy looked at them. Brian was there, and he was the one who'd knocked Jack over, along with a couple other guys she'd seen before. I think all of those guys are in the Latin Society. Yep, I was in the Latin Society as well. Really? That explained why Jack knew so much about it. Why did you leave? At first, Jack didn't say anything. It just wasn't for me. He walked quickly up the stairs, Cadell following behind him. Emmy wanted to ask more questions, but she really didn't know Jack that well. She didn't want to seem nosy. But she couldn't help but wonder what made Jack leave Latin Society and why he couldn't tell her about it.